But Bibi Netanyahu has been doing, and you can look this up for yourself on Twitter, for a few months in 2017, he goes on at his desk and in English gives statements about how the Iranian people need to be liberated. The Iranian regime is evil. In English. Why does he do it in English? He is the prime minister of Israel. They speak Hebrew in Israel. Why does he do it in English? He gives these addresses to an American audience, to a Western audience, for Western consumption, about how Iran, they're the villains. They hate freedom. They hate your way of life. They hate Israelis. They're so innocent, the Israelis. They're so good, but the Iranian government hates them. And the Iranian people are longing to be liberated. You get this for months and months, and then you get this presentation in English, in Israel, by the Prime Minister of Israel, where they speak Hebrew. Why does he do it in English? For you, for your benefit. He's not trying to convince anybody in Israel, because nobody in Israel is going to die in this war, because nobody in Israel is going to go and fight in Iran. We're the ones that are going to go and do it. So he gives a speech in English to an American audience to drum up American support for an American war for Israeli interests in Iran. And that's how it went in Iraq. They tried to do it in Syria. That's how it went in Libya. That's how it went in Somalia. That's how it went in Sudan. That's how it went in Egypt. Every one of them. And that's what they're up to here again today. And we'll see what happens. We heard it all before in 2003. Remember Colin Powell with his little vial of anthrax? Remember? Oh, we have the evidence. We have the soil samples. They have weapons of mass destruction. Remember the Office of Special Plans in the Pentagon? Who said Saddam Hussein was behind 9/11. What? Wrong. We heard it all before in 2003. And it just so happened that it followed through to the letter Israel's national interest. What a coincidence. Isn't that such a coincidence? Is it? Wow, what a magical thing how that works out. Israel wants war with Iran, and wow, Israel provides all this intelligence about how we should go to war with Iran. Wow, they're really smart. They're really smart people. Closest ally, right? Israel wants to destroy Iran, and they tell us, here are reasons you should destroy Iran. We should probably believe them, right? In English, they say, hey, hello, fellow Israelis. Here is this English presentation about how Iran is evil and all the rest. So he gives his little speech, and we'll see how Trump reacts. But it's worth mentioning, I did a whole show about this on World Report before the Maker support went under, about the clean break memo. I could get shot for talking about this, no joke. You want to, we talk about the Israeli interest in the war in Iran, and people think this is conspiracy talk. Oh, this is tinfoil hat stuff. You think Israel would lie to America? They would fabricate intelligence to get us to war in Iran, even though they would totally want that? I don't know. It just doesn't seem right to me. This isn't on Fox News. This isn't covered in the mainstream press. You must be some kind of radical. It's probably less legitimate because you're reporting on it, right, Nick? Well, let me lay it out for you. The clean, and this is all public. You can look all this up. It's in the mainstream press. They wrote about it a while ago. They don't talk about it so much anymore. But the clean break memo was a memo written in 1996 by Richard Pearl, Douglas Feith, and David Wormser. These were the three big people who compiled it. Pearl he supervised the compilation of this memo, the clean break memo. And this was a memo about Israel's national security written for then Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. He was Prime Minister at the time in 96. Clean break memo was written by these three people for Bibi Netanyahu. And what was in the clean break memo? They said it was time for a new strategy for Israel. They said that Israel's foreign policy for decades had been comprehensive peace. That was the name of their foreign policy before. The idea was that when Israel was founded in 1948, they have faced perpetual contests against their legitimacy in the region. They faced a war for independence in 1948, a war in 1956, a war in 1967, a war in 1973, or was it 71? I believe it was 73. 4 wars and then 2 intifadas. And so in 1996, they said, look, this hasn't been working out. We previously had tried doing comprehensive peace agreements with these Arab countries. For example, the Camp David Accords in 1978, which solidified peace between Israel and Egypt. In 1996, they said, we can't really do this anymore. It's not working. We can't make peace with all these different countries. Additionally, we can't dominate Lebanon. We're pretty much secure to our southern border. We've made peace with Egypt. We've made peace with Saudi Arabia. We've made peace with Jordan, with the Hashemite kingdom there. The one trick is Syria and Lebanon on our northern border. Syria, they had been in a perpetual state of war since 1948. In Lebanon, they had essentially also been in a perpetual state of war since 1948 as well. And particularly in the case of Lebanon, when Israel declared independence in 48, the Palestinians, about 750,000 Palestinians, fled Israel into Lebanon because Israel was like massacring and genociding them. So they went to Lebanon. Israel fought with Lebanon for a long time. There were border skirmishes in the War of 67. Israel went up into Lebanon, into Syria. They went down into Egypt. There was a civil war in Lebanon. There was the Palestinian Liberation Organization formed in the 1970s that was driven out of Jordan and then into Lebanon, where they waged attacks to Israel. And so basically Israel said, look, in 1996, we're not going to be able to have peace with all these countries. We have this problem on our northern border. How do we fix it? Let's rethink all of it. And so in the clean break memo, Douglas Feith, Richard Pearl, or was it Robert or Richard? It was Pearl, okay? Douglas Feith, I think it was Richard Pearl, David Wormser, they put together the clean break memo to address these problems. And they say, we have to transcend the Middle East. Can't make peace with them. We have to transcend them. How do we do it? We have to secure our northern border. How do we do that? We have Hezbollah in Lebanon. We have Syria to our north. Well, how do we take them out? They say, well, first we have to take out Iraq, because Iraq is a Ba'athist country. Syria is a Ba'athist country. Maybe if we take out Iraq first, that'll cause an insurrection among the Ba'athist clerics in Syria. Or maybe if we take out Iraq, it'll lessen support for Syria, because although they were both Ba'athists, they were kind of rivals. They were allies in the smallest and least sense. But they say, this is in the memo, we'll destroy Iraq as a means to then destroy Syria. And all of this will serve the goal of defeating Hezbollah. And while we're at it, we'll also destroy Iran, because we will never defeat Hezbollah. We will never dominate Lebanon. We will never control our northern border until we destroy Syria, which backs Hezbollah, destroy Iran, which backs Hezbollah and the PLO, and destroy Iraq, which backs them. And that's the memo. Does that sound familiar? Does that policy sound familiar to you? Well, that's a pretty loose association. They said this in 1996, and policy is seen basically to follow that. We took out Iraq. Syria was basically it was in front of us. That was served up to us on a silver platter for us to take out. Looks like we pulled back, thanks to, I guess, the Obama administration, the Trump administration. Haven't gone to war in Syria just yet, but they've been calling for war in Syria. They've been calling for regime change in Syria. They've been calling for war in Iran all along. So, okay, that's a loose association. They say they want these things. It kind of mirrors what the media says and what the defense establishment says, but I'm sure that's not, that doesn't really prove causation. What if I told you that the people that wrote that memo ended up working in the Bush administration? What if I told you that the people that wrote that memo, that supervised that memo being written for Bibi Netanyahu in 1996, not only worked for George W. Bush, but worked in the Defense Department? Not only worked in the Defense Department, but organized a special office in the Pentagon to fabricate intelligence that led us into the Iraq War. What if I told you that that office had somebody employed in it who was indicted for espionage for passing secrets about Iran through AIPAC to the Israeli government? What if I told you all that? What if I told you that all the mainstream media doesn't even hide that? That you could find that in the New York Times, you could find that in Mother Jones. Would you call me a crazy person if I told you all that? Because it's true. Douglas Feith, Richard Pearl, those names may sound familiar because they worked in the Defense Department. They created the Office of Special Plans in the Pentagon, which was tasked specifically with fabricating evidence, exaggerating evidence that tied Saddam Hussein to Al-Qaeda, which, the public was a little bit upset about something called 9/11, so they tried to connect that to Iraq for regime change in Iraq. And let me read you a few things about the Office of Special Plans from Wikipedia. Let me read you just a few things from The Guardian, and this is in Wikipedia, about the Office of Special Plans. This was the office created in the Pentagon by people in the Defense Department: Richard Pearl, Douglas Feith, Worms, who served under Bolton, who's a national security chief now, and also under Dick Cheney. They wrote Clean Break Memo in 96. This is their office. I'm about to describe to you the office by these people who wrote the Clean Break Memo, later created this office in the Bush administration. This is from The Guardian. Quote, the Office of Special Plans was an open and largely unfiltered conduit to the White House. Not only for the Iraqi opposition, it also forged close ties to a parallel ad hoc intelligence operation inside Ariel Sharon's office in Israel, the Prime Minister of Israel, specifically to bypass Mossad and provide the Bush administration with more alarmist reports on Saddam's Iraq than Mossad was prepared to authorize. So, in summary, the Office of Special Plans was a conduit through which the Prime Minister of Israel's office shared intelligence that was so alarmist about Saddam Hussein, so extreme, so unverified, that even the Mossad would not give it to the U.S. government. That's the Office of Special Plans. The people that wrote the Clean Break Memo for Bibi Netanyahu that said, hey, let's destroy Iraq, they later created an office that, in the words of The Guardian, served as a back channel for the office of the Prime Minister of Israel to pass along intelligence that was so outrageous about Saddam Hussein that not even the Mossad, not even Israel's intelligence service would greenlight. That's the Office of Special Plans. Another quote. Quote, none of the Israelis who came were cleared into the Pentagon through normal channels, said one source familiar with the visits. Instead, they were waved in on Mr. Feith's authority without having to fill in the usual forms. You got Israelis coming through into this office without having to fill in the forms. Last one, quote, the exchange of information continued a long-standing relationship with Mr. Feith and other Washington neoconservatives had with Israel's Likud party. That's Bibi Netanyahu's party, the far-right party in Israel. So that's the Office of Special Plans. What a winner. What a country we live in, right? So you hear this stuff about Israel. Is that, am I an anti-Semite for saying that? Am I an anti-Semite for delivering to you these facts? To look at these connections and patterns? Because Jacob Wohl will get on my program and say it's just plain Jew hatred. It's just plain bigotry. It's just plain anti-Semitism. To connect all these dots. To say, hey, the same people who wrote a memo in 96 for the Israeli government saying, hey, it's a good idea to destroy Iraq, then served in the Bush administration, presided over the invasion of Iraq. They served as a puppet for the Israeli government from the mainstream press. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess I'm a hater. Well, you might as well, trusted flaggers might as well flag the video. I've gone full fash, right? I'm literally Hitler, I guess. Because I don't want to see America involved in another $6 trillion war for another nation's interest so this country can secure their northern border. Think of the hypocrisy. We went to war in Iraq to secure Israel's northern border. We're going to go to war in Syria and Iran to secure Israel's northern border. We can't secure our southern border, and we're going to war. $25 billion is too much for a 1,000, half the length of our southern border. $25 billion is a bridge too far, too much money. $6 trillion and an additional 2.5 for Iran? No cost is too high to secure Israel's northern border. And not just secure it, it's plenty secure. Hezbollah versus the IDF? Not really a difficult bet. Not really a gamble there. Who's going to win that one? We don't even hate them. We don't even hate them. We just can't be their lapdog anymore. I don't hate them. You wanna go to war with Iran? By all means, go ahead. I don't really care about Iran. I really don't. Oil prices will go up. That'll upset me. Won't be able to fill up my tank with cheap fuel. But I don't care what happens between Israel and Iran if it doesn't involve the United States. Israel can pursue its warmongering, bloodthirsty, satanic foreign policy across the whole world, as long as they don't do it with our army and with our money. But they're taking with both hands, and they're directing our foreign policy. You can't have it. Can't have it. It's not right.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. It's going to be only America first. America first. American people.